Yeah.
You do. So, welcome to this evening's meeting of the Local Development Framework Subcommittee. I will go through the first is the evacuation procedure. We're not expecting any planned alarms tonight, so if you do hear the alarm, you guys know the drill. One of you is experiencing the exits either to the rear of the chamber or out back through the way you came in, and then form up in the car park. And please wait to be dismissed. So we don't have to send firefighters in looking for you as you've driven off down the trip job or gone home. Okay. Apologies and absence from members away on official council business. I only have apologies from Councillor Dervix and Councillor Hayden Phillips, who's going to sub. That's okay. Are there any other apologies? No. Okay. Are there?
Chair.
Yes.
I do apologise for interrupting. This is now the second time that council has been missing. It might be worth contacting to make sure he knows it's actually on the committee.
Okay. Well, you'll get the invite.
Oh, right, you might. Like, that's fair enough. So it's the second time he's missed one without sending his apologies. I just wondered if he knew.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to be funny. So he might not actually know because we had the change, and we might have just missing his email.
Can we do that? Can we just contact Councillor Osborne and just make sure that he is aware that he is part of the LDF?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Are there any declarations of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests? Or is anyone interested? Okay. Right, next item on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of July. And I think there were some concerns about the minutes. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chair. It was just really, I thought there were some things that we had decided at the last board which could be read in the minutes, but they don't give me enough information to remind me of what we said. So, for example, I thought we'd agreed that there'd be a paper or note as part of it, and I accept it is within agenda item 5 on this occasion. But talking about the time frame for the local plan and the resources available and needed, I can't remember exactly what some of the issues were that were raised on the Government memorandum of understanding, or some of the, I think there was a review of another areas plan, and it is sort of referenced in 6A, but I thought we'd been a little bit more specific about within the options paper the other policy areas which were considered. It wasn't from my memory that we were happy with all of the existing parts of the plan which were not to be reviewed. I thought there were a number that we were going to add to the review list, but I can't remember that. I tend to rely on the minutes to tell me what it was we agreed, and if it's not there, I forget.
Okay, thank you. Dorothy, might you respond?
We can have a review of the recording from the meeting and look back at our notes to see if there was anything else that needed to be recorded in the minutes, or else we can carry those forward, any issues into the forthcoming work programme. So either way, we can do those things.
Yeah, I think that would be useful, because I think Councillor Simpson makes a valid point, and that there will, because I know some of the policies, and I know on Friday's meeting, and I should have started by actually saying you would have received an invite to Friday fortnightly meeting before the planning meeting, for those that can attend, so we can talk about LDF, etc., and go through that. But I know Councillor Bell raised some issues on Friday about the traveller policy, for example, and the fact that that wasn't going to be reviewed, but she felt it may need to be looked at. But I think there are a number of policies there that, when we talked about not reviewing, I think there were some concerns raised that we could review some of those. So if you could look back, I feel like that'd be useful. Do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, in terms of that, I'm happy to do that. In relation to the issue there that you raised, from Councillor Bell, LP10, which is in 6A, that is the Gypsy Traveller, and that was to be included within the review. So that has been covered by that minute. Thank you.
Super, thank you. But it would be useful if there were any others, because I think there was quite a lot of debate about what was in. I think the main ones have been captured, but certainly on the Gypsy Traveller one. So, with those comments in mind, what I propose, can we actually look at the minutes and have that review first before we approve the minutes? And then perhaps carry those minutes forward, seems to make sense, rather than approve minutes that we're not 100% certain on.
I'm happy to propose that, Chairman.
Seconded by Councillor Ridley. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Any against or any abstentions? No. Cool, thank you. Right, okay, so moving on, it's hopefully won't be too long tonight, because actually it's quite a light agenda, but what we wanted to go ahead with the meeting was we didn't want to just cancel it because we think it's such an important piece of work, the local plan. We want to give an update. There's been a number of developments and a number of changes, so I'll hand over to Dorothy and Mike.
Thank you. As you can see in the report, we've tried to give out the latest situation, in particular at 3.2. So we've had the very first bit of the landscape sensitivity work received, and we've also received a first draft of stage 1 of the Greenbelt study as well. We've made some comments back on that, and we're just waiting back for the comments from the consultants. In addition, as you'll see under item 3 there, 3.23, the pathways to planning, unfortunately, the candidates didn't want to come to North Warwickshire. So we are in the system to go for the funding for next year. So that will go back to board as well as part of that. As you'll see under item 7, we say about the drafting of the next stage of the issues and options for the local plan. We've actually provisionally booked the 23rd of October for the evening meeting of a members' workshop to discuss a draft version of the issues and options, and you'll be able to ask any questions about those drafts. We'll aim to get those papers out in accordance with the normal convention as well, and then hopefully that would go to the 17th of November LDF meeting. In terms of that, I'm happy to answer any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. Do we have any questions? Councillor Ridley.
It's always sad, isn't it? Then they didn't want to come to us. That sounds awful. But is it because of the devolution process? I take it it's because that. Because that made him.
They don't want to spend any money here anyway.
Was it to do with
No.
finance? Was it to do with devolution, or perhaps you can enlighten that?
No, I understand that they've actually been offered posts at bigger authorities where they could get experience in a number of different departments, and that was the reason why. So
It's not for the best biscuits, I think, is it?
not that I'm aware of. Yeah, we'll try harder for next time.
Well, what the handiest one is what they went to Coventry. So Coventry won that, which I'm not bitter.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chair. Reading through the report, particularly section 3 in table 1, feels like the timescale for delivery of the local plan has elongated. Is that right? And if it is, I'd like to understand why.
There's a number of reasons. We've perhaps been over optimistic in terms of the original timescale, but also it's in relation to the evidence gathering, but also in terms of the team have been focusing on doing the in-house housing, employment, land availability assessment work, whereas previously we've done that externally. But what we found last time was that the consultants just kept coming back and asking us the questions. So that this time, with the help of the summer placement, we've actually done a lot of that work internally. And I think also, because we were splitting our time between the employment paper and the issues and options, I don't think I fully realised just how much that was stretching the team either. So to actually combine it all into one set of plans and an evidence gathering, I think will be a lot more focused and a lot more easier to work to. At the timetable that you have before you is something that we will aim to keep to as much as we possibly can, and it will only be things that are out of our control that will be things that will stop us achieving those. But I can assure you that this now is the timetable that we are working heavily towards.
The timetable's a bit of a broad phrase, isn't it? When it says consultation will be spring/summer, that's 6 months. When will it happen?
It all depends on when we get the evidence back, and in particular the strategic transport assessment. In accordance with a lot of these things, you have to have enough information on the site to then have the assessments done, but then that has to inform the plan itself. So the team have been working on the HELA information, and that is the background and first phase of the sifting of the sites. And then that will be then the discussion with members. And once we've had the discussion with members, we then can give that information to the county and their consultants to produce things like the strategic transport assessment. But that work can't be done until a number of stages actually happen in front. So as we go through the process and in the coming weeks, I'd be looking to put more bones and timelines on these. But at the moment, I think the line should be February to spring rather than February to summer. It should be to spring, so to March, April time.
And that really, Chairman, is a crux really what I want to get to understand when and what are the risks in terms of delivery. A big part of the conversation I thought we had at the last meeting was to understand time frame. And as I remember, the chairman of Resources Board was very much on board with saying, what do we need to do? What are the resources that need to be delivered to meet that time frame? And I'm still, if you will, in the situation saying, feels like it's a vague rather than a detailed timescale. I'd like some more certainty. And if we need to provide additional resource to deliver, I'd like to understand what that is and how we can find it. And I still don't feel I'm in that place. I am genuinely concerned about things that are happening elsewhere in this board than in this board, about housing appeals or housing application appeals, and wanting to have a degree of certainty, given that we have, I think it now officially called an activate plan, and therefore that has risks for us in terms of determining planning appeals. So, Chairman Larsey, I need to know when this is going to be delivered and what do we need to do to give us certainty on delivery. I understand everything that the officer was saying about the risks to it. What I need to understand is how we manage and avoid those risks.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and your concerns are shared. And Dorothy and I had a meeting earlier. We asked Mike to put the dates amongst those. So, it's in mid-October. We've obviously got dates for that now. We are looking at a plan, but I do agree with you. We have had conversations around resource. You'll be aware that unfortunately one of Dorothy's team members has got another role elsewhere in enforcement. So they're in the process of moving across, which is not ideal timing. But I think, Dorothy, I'm right in saying you've interviewed for some additional resource this week. You got another interview next week. Perhaps you want to give us some, I guess twofold. One, when can we start putting actual more accurate dates that we're willing to kind of now flag to, as it were, and also where are you with resource?
I think once I've got the certainty of the resource, then I can actually fill out the timeline a lot clearer. This was excuse me. This was starting to fill in the bones from the local development scheme and trying to put some flesh on there. But yes, it's not as detailed as I would like, and I can understand the concerns. All that I can say is that I can work to try and fill those gaps in. I've started to look at the risks and also at the team and the resources. So that is something that is ongoing at the minute. If we can get a replacement for the post that's becoming vacant, then that would be a step forward. And then if there's anything else in addition to that, then we can look at that. I think getting that first step would be the ideal thing first. But I'm happy to bring that back to members, either if it's to the November meeting or if they're wanting a meeting before then, happy to discuss it then as well.
Yeah, I think to be fair, I think what members would like, and certainly myself, is turn it on its head actually, rather than just replacing Sue. What other resource do we need? And if that means two heads, then come back to us as members, Dorothy, and we'll do the battles with Steve around and working with Chair of Resources around what other resource do you need? What could we do? So if we need to bring in another 2 people, I know that it's difficult to find one, but if we need to bring in another 2 or maybe 3 to kind of really accelerate the timelines, I'm certainly happy to take that battle on and have those conversations with the authority, because I think it's so important that we get this done. And I'd like to build in some facts, as I said to you, because I'm concerned around the consultation process and the consultation timelines. You know, if we get lots of pushbacks and we have to go back out to another round of consultation, that all takes a lot of time, you know. And so I think what I'd say, picking up on Councillor Simpson's point, is look for the resource. But if we need more resource, that, you know, think a bit broader than that and say, do I need more resource? Actually, do I need 2 heads rather than a replacement head? And we'll do those battles. I think members would be happy with that.
I would, but not until November, Chairman. That's 2 months plus away, and you know, I don't wait till November to make a decision.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that, and I was going to make that point as well, because obviously Dorothy's interviewed 1 this week, 1 next week. But I would say actually, if we need to take them both on, or if you think taking them both on would accelerate this timeline and give us certainty around dates, then come back to us and we'll have that conversation.
Can you do that quickly?
The option.
Councillor Humphries.
I was wondering, Chair, I was, looking at strategic transport assessment. I mean, where do we do that? I mean, just a little while ago, we had 3 different plans to consider. I'm going to deal with the A5 up through Grendon to Dordon. We had a plan, the government's kicked that into the long grass, and naturally they kicked it well beyond the long grass. So what do we assess? Are we going to live with what we've got, or are we going to tell them what we need? We've already told them what we need, and they've kicked that in the long grass. And while I've been sat here, I've just had somebody send me something from BBC Leicester, which talks about avoiding Dodwells and at the bottom end of the A5, which is outside our area, but it does affect it. And I'll give you a personal problem this morning. I went down there this morning. There's a new set of traffic lights that's come into opposite the Taylor Whitby homes between Higham Lane and Dodwells. That added 45 minutes to the journey this morning because one light's changed, then the next light changed. So the whole concept is open for discussion, and I'd like to know how we can do an assessment on something that is a total moving feast. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair question, but we know it's a moving feast. You know, we know that we had a plan with the A5. We know that plan got kicked out. You know, we know we've got requests for employment sites around Junction 9. You know, we know the M42. You know, but that's what I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dorothy. That once we know the sites, that's when the strategic transport plan, the assessment is done. to say, actually, if you put another 100 houses there, or if you put another factory there, that's the impact on the infrastructure.
Yes, that's,
Yes, that's absolutely right. It has to build up. And one of the options will be, that we do carry on with the existing allocations. But it's whether they're going to be then deliverable within the plan period. It's likely that they would be, but in a drip fed way, so that they come forward in a piecemeal way. But then you have to then make sure that you get the required infrastructure that is necessary to make them a proper place that people want to live there.
And can I ask a question? By the infrastructure, do we also talk about doctors, schools, and all of those things? Right. So I've got Councillor Simpson, Councillor Hobley, and then Councillor Ricky.
Thank you, Chairman. It's two, but I'll ask one at the minute. I just want to go back to timescale. Because on table one says we're going to, in spring, summer, or whatever time we have, we will get to consideration of the, we'll get to the consultation on regulation 19 in spring, stroke summer. And then after that, consultation of responses and a submission version, which will then go through the hearing. What's the end date? When will the new plan be available for adoption? And I know there's a whole bunch of ifs, buts, maybes, and everything else. But when do we think the new plan will be available for council to adopt it?
The aim would be December 2026, because it's after submission, it's normally 6 months for an examination. And within that 6 months, you would have the examination hearings, any modifications, and then the report back to the council. And then that would be when you would take it back to full council for its consideration to either be adopted.
And what I really would like to understand, Chairman, is what is our ability to reduce that time frame by 6 months?
Which goes back to the question of, so let's look at trying to reduce.
Some more meat on that,
Yeah.
because I think December 26 is a long time.
My understanding, it has to be done by December 2026. So
Submission needs to be done by 2026. So our plan runs out on the 29th of September 2026. So the aim is to have made sure that we submit our local plan for examination way before that date, if we possibly can.
Okay.
The examination process, you're in then the hands of PINS, and normally an examination can be between 3 to 6 months. But of course, as we know, in our last hearings, that was a lot longer. But again, we were in the hands of PINS for that. But wherever we can, we will try to make sure that is as short as possible.
so if that was the, sorry,
I would like to rely on this. It runs out in December 26. Arguably, it's run out already. It's out of date. We are getting into a situation where it will not be sustainable long before December 2026. We can't rely on December 2026. That's illusory.
and I think it's a valid point, and as Councillor Humphrey and I would, we normally take HR and work back. So we would be saying, if our plan, it runs out in September 2026, we know 3 to 6 months, we need to be submitting it to PINS by, well, if we say 6 months from there, we need to be submitting it by March, I'm guessing, in reality, which means their submission would need to be. So what I would say, Dorothy, is really have a serious look. What could we do to bring this forward by, as Councillor Simpson has said, kind of as much as possible, ideally 6 months, to then, I guess, give us a level of comfort that we're going to have a plan that we can adopt, and at least have a plan that we'll have a good understanding of long before it actually expires. So I have Councillor Hobley and then Councillor Ritter.
Sorry, thanks, Chair. Just going back to Councillor Humphrey's point, about the A5, I commute to just past Dodwells every morning, so I'll get it. The problem that we've got with situations like that is the infrastructure hasn't been thought about before all them houses were put on, and it's affected what was a 50-mile-an-hour road, which is now a 3-mile-an-hour road because the traffic's so slow moving. Them things need to be considered before the like, as part of the transport bill. These need looking at before, because we've had something come before planning to build houses opposite the houses in that David's actually talking about. The infrastructure cannot cope with them, and that wasn't even for our housing allocation. It was for Hinckley's to push on to Nuneaton. It just came to us for consideration. These things aren't considered. And when Joe Public is saying things like, why haven't they thought about the A5? It's all of our responsibilities to get from Addiston to Hinckley, another town. It's an hour commute, and it's not been thought about. And now it is what it is. And unfortunately, it's only going to get worse. So we really need to, consider it a little better than the Nuneaton have next time.
I think all that we can say is that we totally agree. We're very frustrated. We are, we've spoken to National Highways for years about the A5 and its issues. And we even asked if we could even safeguard land for it to be rerouted to so that it could be improved. And we thought that we'd got a solution to part of the issue with the funding that had been achieved. But unfortunately, feet have been swiped from underneath us. So yeah, we totally sympathise. So
Councillor Ridley.
Thank you, Chair. It always makes me twitch, delivery in parts. We were promised, obviously, we need to look under the options and issues. We need to look at what is deliverable in this plan. Big Dot's quite right. H4 is a hot potato, but very much for the Katie's issues in relation to the transport assessments and that sort of thing. But certainly because the funding was taken away from us, I don't see how we can deliver the volume of houses that H4 is required. Just purely because the infrastructure, and that most of the infrastructure is going to be taken up by that road that goes from the A5 across to the B5000. Primarily because of the state of the land, the contamination, the methane, the water, all sorts of things. I'm sure it is deliverable at some cost, but what cost? I've already had a conversation, an email with planning officer in relation to Long Street, which is getting worse and worse. My concern would be if any of H4 on the borders of Polesworth were delivered, that would be the route, the B5000, the Long Street would be the route into that area if they were to expand the H4 to the west, I think, of the Taylor Wimpey estate. The roads just cannot accommodate any more traffic through those villages, especially with the build out, and there's power driving that's needed, and all sorts of engineering stuff that would be required in order to build effectively. So I am worried. I would really very much like to see what master plan was in place. Is there a master plan in place? What strategy there is if H4 is to come forward within the next sort of like planning period? What is the strategy? I am very much concerned. I understand it's an allocated site. It's an allocation for a large volume of the housing that North Warwickshire needs to allocate. But we've got to be realistic. We have to be realistic, and we also have to be mindful for the people that live that side of North Warwickshire and travel all the way along those roads, as well as our doctors, our schools, and that sort of thing. So an honest conversation about what is realistic and how it can be achieved, or if not, what the strategy is, then I would welcome it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I hear we share all the concerns. We've had the conversations, Dorothy and I have had the conversations. H1, H2 and H4 were all dependent on the A5 upgrades, but as Dorothy quite rightly says, that's no longer an option. So we are looking at, and I've asked Dorothy and Mike to look at what is possible on those sites. You know, H4 is a very large site. Is some of it still possible? You know, if you built on the A5 end, then potentially there. You know, you reach a certain point where you need a second entrance. If that's going to go up, you know, and then back down Long Street, then that becomes, you know, that's the problem. But you're absolutely right. We need those considerations about what have we got, what's been allocated, and what's now feasible based on what we now know, because the world's changed and moved. You know, we have a number of other sites that we need to look at, and that's what that all comes part of that. Just a question on the issues and options paper. I think when we talked last time, and I asked Dorothy to clarify, because I naively thought I was going to get a paper that said site A, this is the issues and options, site B, but that's not what we're going to get, is it? So can you just talk us through, or potentially, because I know you and I spoke earlier about potentially send out an example to members about what that looks like, because I've never got to look at that before. I don't know. I was saying naively expecting to see site A, this is issues and options, site B, this is issues and options. So do you want to explain a bit more about what an actual issues and options, or this first draft of it is, and what we're likely to see?
I haven't brought one for the local plan, because that was a number of years ago. But what I have done is I found the one that was for the draft employment plan, and that was September 2023. So that was the scope, issues and options paper that members agreed. I think it was in July 23. So what I was going to suggest that I can circulate that to give members an idea of what the issues and options paper would look like. Of course, this only deals with employment policies, whereas the local plan one will look at all of the policies from the local plan, essentially. But it gives you an idea. It sets out the issues, what's perhaps changed since the last time. It then says in the local plan version, we'll have a range of options maybe for the policy, and then a number of questions that we'll ask as well in terms of the consultation. So that's that's the sort of thing that we're aiming to do. And I'm happy to circulate that tomorrow to all members of the board.
Thank you. I think that would be useful. It's certainly useful for me. So I'll suggest that yes. So when did we get to a point at which you say, right, okay, this was we had to call for sites, and we had all of these sites in. So Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, you know, suggested site A or something. When we get to a point of going, actually, yes, is that in or is it out?
So the plan would be that we do the issues and options paper first. We'll get that agreed and go out for consultation. Whilst we're out for consultation with that document, that's when we talk to members. And I was thinking of either 2 or 3 meetings where we could go through all of the sites so that members can see them all, see all the information that we've gathered for each of those sites. And then we can bring those back to a board meeting so that the decision can be taken as to whether they get brought forward. So that would be in the list, that would be in the November stage there. But the idea would be probably to have 2 or 3 workshops, because then we can go through the borough in a lot more detail.
Thank you. And I think, you know, genuinely, this board wants to help, you know, but we realise how important this document is, because this sets the stead. And then Councillor Simpson's right, you know, when we're sitting in planning meetings, you know, we've already had quotes, and we've had kind of issues back to us that puts in quite a difficult position as a planning authority when we've not got or you know, an undeliverable, to use an expression, local plan. You know, that's not a great place to be, because if you've not got that, then it's very difficult to not give approval for things that you might have not otherwise give approval for. So I think we're keen, and what I would say is please do have a real look and say, actually, how do I bring this forward? What would I do? You know, if I had you know, a blank sheet of paper, or if I had you know, any options open to me, what could I do to actually bring this forward? And I do understand, because I know the frustration that you had with the the Greenbelt Review, and I know we are beholden to a number of external bodies that we have no control over. But I think if we've got the resource at our end where we're just pushing, chipping away, I think we could do that. But I do agree with Councillor Simpson. I think if our plan expires in September 2026 and it's going to take him 6 months to do, then I'd like to be submitting it much earlier. Okay, Ed, did you want to respond to that?
Yes, Chair. Sorry, it's partly just a bit of clarification on the issues and options. One of the problems we had with the meeting with the NHCLG was that we wanted to progress it quicker based on a partial review. In other words, we would look to roll over current policies where we felt there was no conflict with the National Planning Policy Framework 2024. Frankly, they weren't very keen on that approach, but we will still push for that because that does reduce the time. The reason I'm going back into is because of the strategy. It's the strategic issues that obviously are ones most heavily fought over. And as part of the issues options, you've got to have clearly showed before you get to the inquiry stage that you've at least considered all the options. So for that very point you're raising about what blank piece of paper, what are the options? Effectively, that's what the issues and options stage will try and say. We will try and cover from our side what we believe are realistic options, but it could cover a lot. So we will have questions in there that says, this is the direction of travel we think we should go, and this will be the quickest, and we see no conflict with the current NPPF with this approach. It's whether we get challenged on that. That will come down to the situation we're faced in for the Reg 19. Hopefully, if I'm going to touch wood here, we can progress effectively as the old local development framework, which this board is named after, system used to do, which basically said, if you have current policies that don't need changing, don't change them, roll them over. And that is really going to be one of our main intentions. And we're hoping that that will be a reasonable approach. What we didn't want to do and what we were being pushed towards was a wholesale local plan review on the old style local plan review that we've previously gone through, which you all know took significantly longer than we expected and will leave us open to challenge, particularly as Councillor Simpson has mentioned, in terms of the time frames that we've got with the local plan becoming out of date. There is a potential also legal overview in that if we can say and get agreed that these certain policies are not changing, we may be able to, and I would have to get legal advice on this, then rely on those policies to continue. And so we can't or won't be challenged, and they will still carry the weight of the development plan. Now, all that at this point is speculative, but that is the direction we're hoping to get, because I see that as being able to give us the time to deliver it far, far quicker. And if we don't have to analyse every dot and every T crossed, that will help us.
Thanks for that, Mike. And whose gift is that in? You say we could be challenged. Challenged by who? And so if we look at a policy, and I agree with it. So if we look at a policy, we go, yeah, actually that still looks okay. That still looks relevant. It's still compliant with the planning framework, and we don't feel it needs any changing. But who would then challenge? What would be the purpose of reviewing the whole thing just to come back to almost the same document?
Exactly. It will be the development industry, those involved in strategic issues, particularly in this case, we all know the logistics, the employment side of it, but also the housing side. As an example, the South Warwickshire issues and options and their subsequent plan is looking at new settlement options. We will have the option there, but we're not looking at that. We think, I believe our current settlement hierarchy is reasonable and should be maintained. But it is those, and it will come down to a fairly cynical and mercenary approach. If the development industry have submitted sites that don't fit in with that hierarchy, they will try and challenge it. It's as simple as that.
Okay, it's useful to know. It's good. Councillor Simpson.
Thanks, Johnson. Yeah, it's a bit of Russian roulette, isn't it? You know, either you review everything because the world has moved on, or you don't only risk a challenge. I think inevitably there are going to be some elements of the plan which are still good. I mean, I can't say exactly what those are for now, but we look at the whole of the plan from page 1 to the last page, there will be some elements of it, I'm sure, that are reasonable. Just a fair assessment of roughly how much are we going to have to review. And a chunk of this, I'm sure, will be identified when we go through the consultation phases, because we'll understand what consultees are saying. But that sort of takes on to my second question, Chairman, and that's really on section 6 in the budget. And this is another big area of concern for me. Because when we look back at the last time we had a plan, that cost us about £500,000 to get to. Then we got 155,000. So my question, and on top of that, we know there's inflation, we know there is a new system, and we know lawyers don't cost less than they did all that time ago. But on top of that, I equally accept that there are methods that we may be able to use that will enable us to deliver things more quickly or to deliver things in a different way, which may cost less. But I am aware that there's a long way to go. There's a lot of expensive advice to be sought. So my question really is, have we got essentially 400,000 shortfall on the budget? Or are we saying that actually the 26-7 year will have a budget of 400,000 to fill that hole? Or what are we saying? Because I get the point, it's saying we'll have further reports in due course, including the cost of legal representation. But we all know how much it cost last time. And that wasn't £155,000. So where are we going? I think it's not unreasonable for us to have that figure, however broad it is, because somebody has got to provide for it. And if we were simply to roll over the current year budget of 155 into next year's budget, that's giving us broadly 300,000, 310,000. That strikes me as still £250,000 short on what potentially it could cost, unless we're able to find substantial cost reductions over the last time we did a plan, however realistic that is or not. So where are we going? And on top of that, that's before we start talking about what additional money we may need to enhance the pace of delivery.
It is something that I'm actively looking at with the budget team, the finance team. The 155 is what's currently available. So what was rolled over from the underspend from last year and what was added to for this year, but that doesn't include any of the expenditure that we've already incurred in those two financial years. So that is what's outstanding. We have commissioned some evidence work, so there is some expenditure out of that has already been earmarked for certain things. Originally, I think for next year's budget, it was again going to be the 113,000 for next year, but that's something in the budget talks that are just about to be kicked off, or for that I'm looking at that to see whether that can be increased. So that is something that is actively ongoing at the moment.
Sounds like the German resources is going to need a very large handbag.
So I was going to actually elaborate on that and just say, so do you feel that we are going to need to be asking for more money?
Definitely. I don't think there's any way around it.
And I guess the question will be, so once we know what that number is, coming to the chairman of resources.
Just to clarify on that, we're already impacting that with the very points that Doc's made reference to, the current evidence bases that we have to commission you will look at it in some cases a third, in others doubling the price of what we did for similar work in 2016, 2017, 2017, 2018. So post-COVID, across the board, and I've discussed this with friends and colleagues in the other authorities, this is like Warwickshire, Coventry, Warwick, Rugby, Nuneaton, and North West Leicestershire and Tamworth. They have significantly increased.
But I think, yeah, and the point being, we understand that, we know the world moved on it. But for me to go to the chair of resources, I need a number. If I'm gonna go and ask for £500,000, then I need to know it's £500,000.
That's
Whatever.
what,
Can we watch?
that's what,
Can we watch?
Absolutely.
and that's what I'm working on at the moment.
But I think it would be helpful, even at this stage, for us to understand the sort of costs those other authorities had, because, you know, ultimately, I mean, I can't remember how long the hearing took, but I know an appeal process that was about a week or so, that cost us £250,000 with one of these very reasonable lawyers. So, you know, if the other authorities are in the £500,000 range to deliver their plan, or are they in the £1 million? So my sort of, you know, shortfall guess has got significant shortfalls in it on its own.
Yeah, and it is that kind of chicken and egg rock and hard place. We know we've got an appeal or challenge coming up in December for 6 days. That's going to have and that's why this document is so important, because it kind of gives us the ammunition to fight those appeals, yeah, or to not even have those appeals in the first place.
Spending to save.
Exactly. It's investment. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or any other comments on the report? As
Relating to that 155,000, I know Dr. alluded to the.
yeah,
Talking
Mike.
talking about with the about that with the finance team. Is that currently reforecast, or is it in the risk register for the organisation that we have a significant hole in that?
I have to come back to you on that. I know that the local plan has always been one of those things that always appears on the risk register because of its ongoing costs and the implications of it. So I'd have to check whether it's on the latest risk register. That's something. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Briggs.
Just saying, if it started when I put the motion in June 2023, it would have been finished.
I wasn't chair then. Okay, any other questions or comments on the report?
Can I just ask what you're going to ask us to vote on, Chair? Because I think the recommendation is a bit light based on what we talked about.
Yeah, I think obviously the recommendation was to that the report be supported. Well, we support the report, you know, but there's more clarity and more detail, I think, that's come out of this debate. That I think we need. So for me, I think the recommendation, certainly I'd like to see some additional recommendations in there around funding. So what's that funding likely, or funding shortfall likely to be? I'd also like to see another recommendation in there to ask Dorothy and Mike to go away and look at how we can accelerate that timeline. So we want some more clarity on the timeline, some more details on the timeline, and a proposal, I guess, as to what's required to accelerate that timeline. That's Sinners.
Yeah, just to quickly follow up on that for people perhaps who weren't around at the time, just to explain why maybe you know, we just had a comment about timeline and the motion in 2023. At the time, there was also changes to the planning framework expected. So had we have started earlier, we would have been paying the huge sums we're talking about twice, which we obviously didn't want to do. And that is one of the
frustrations of politics, isn't it?
I wasn't going to rise to Councillor Ridley's comment.
You shouldn't have done.
Because we all know that we actually had that long delay waiting for the new planning framework before we started any work. Councillor Ridley.
Yeah, we had a white paper that we were waiting for, which was reasonable. And we also then had to change government, which have introduced all sorts of caveats in grey belt and green belt. So, like I say, it's the most frustrating board in the whole world being on planning because everything changes constantly. So I understand, but it was just a glib. I just wanted to get I put the motion and we're being sorted.
And I thought it was love that changed everything. The only other thing I'd say to what you were suggesting as the motion was, I think we need to know when it's coming back to us, because I genuinely am concerned that if we wait until November, whatever, you know, we're too far off. I'd like a more speedy report back, please.
Yeah, is that okay? Or I think it would be good, and that is also why we went for the October, why we had an additional meeting put in October for a members workshop, and that is open to all members, by the way. That issues and options workshop,
Date on that, sorry.
23rd of October.
23rd.
Oh, that's what's been proposed. So yeah. So, and I agree, and I think actually in this interim period, I'm happy to have much more regular meetings. I think we do need those regular meetings to keep, you know, it's the old adage of what's kind of what's managed or what's measured gets managed, isn't it? And it's, I think, those timelines. So yeah, we'll watch this space because I'm happy to have additional meetings if the board is happy to have those as well. I think it's that important. Seeing no dissensions. So yes, I think if we could have those additional recommendations for accelerated timeline, actually budget shortfall, for Dorothy might to come back to us. How long do you think that will take Dorothy might to come back to us on those two?
Yeah, I need to check with finance to see how quickly we can get that back to you.
So I think
Come
we'll
back to you
get
tomorrow?
get me the number, and then we can go to finance and have that challenge with finance as a. But I think what is that shortfall based on like the conversation with other authorities? You know, are we miles off? You know, are we looking at another, as Councillor Simpson said, another £500,000 or another £1 million?
Well, we've actually got a regular meeting with the policy officers from the Coventry Warwickshire area tomorrow, so we can ask them there. We have done it in the past where we also compared the number of staff and what staff did and things like that. So we can also have a review of that and see what is happening elsewhere.
Councillor Simpson.
So, Chairman, I'm happy to that we can leave the selection of a date to you and the shadow chairman to agree where it should be, as long as it's not November.
Okay. Any other comments or any other proposals? Obviously, there are 2 other recommendations that have been added to those recommendations that are already there. I have a proposal.
Sorry, Chairman, I do have one other question because I get confused in my English. Teach whatever it is. How do the SPDs fit into this process? Are they completely separate to it, or are they part and parcel of the review?
They're actually separate. They're actually separate work streams, and we were hoping to have got them progressed a lot further, but as you can see, we haven't.
And given that, and the need to progress the plan and all hands to the wheel to deliver that, it would be helpful for us to understand what is the timescale for the likely delivery of these SPDs. Because, you know, if we're going to be doing everything we can to get the plan forward, then presumably there won't be opportunities to deliver the SPDs. And that's sort of making me think that, well, we haven't before the council is abolished on the current timescale in 28, you know, and therefore is the value in doing it or not.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that comment we say, what do we need in order to do those pieces of work? So
Yeah, we can have a look at that as well.
Sorry, I just remembered about you asking another question, but once this popped into my brain, I don't know if this has been asked before, but when the council does get abolished, what will happen with this plan? Will it still stand? Will it still hold any weight? Or, sorry if it's been asked before, Dot.
No, I don't think anybody's asked that one before. No, it should continue. The regulations will be that, well, I would expect that any existing adopted local plans will be carried forward until they become replaced by the new authorities' plans. Because in addition, there'll also be a strategic development plan as well that will sit above the local plans. At the minute, it's unclear what geography the strategic plan will have. But equally, the local plan could be changed, that if we're merged with other authorities, then that local plan could be for all 3 or all 5 authorities, whichever way that goes.
Yeah, we expect they'll roll them forward. Can you imagine on day one then starting this for the whole,
Right.
for the whole of Warwickshire or the 2 unitary model? I think whatever that new authority looks like, they're going to be busy with other things.
Chair, the interesting thing will be, because we have done this in the past at appeal, is if we don't have an SPD, but the adjoining authority does. So for instance, in circumstances we dealt with, it was to do with, I think it was leisure and playing pitches. And I'm going back a few years, 2015, 2012, it was Nuneaton's SPD. We didn't currently have our SPD in place. We'd used, as a comparison, Nuneaton's SPD, and the appeal inspector agreed. Now, when you then move to a larger authority, it may well be that they will be able to cross border using existing, if they're reasonable and they conform with the NPPF, which they will have done to have got to the adoption standard. So that will be an interesting play as to whether, if we create SPDs before you transfer, whether the North Warwickshire SPDs will be applying to Rugby, Nuneaton, Bedford, and or whatever the new borough is. So it is an interesting question, but it's just more of an academic.
Yeah, and I think that depends on the communities. I think part of the challenge is, different communities, it may not be appropriate, and this is one of the challenges from a unitary perspective. The large, bigger is not necessarily beautiful from a perspective of policy, particularly if you've got very different communities within that large geographical area.
Interesting.
Right, so to ask for a proposal and a second out of the recommendations. Do I have a proposal? I'm happy to propose. Councillor Hobley, have a seconder? Councillor Ridley, all those in favour? Any? Councillor Humphries? You in favour? Against?
Sorry.
Thank you. That's carried unanimously. And I think that it is it. We've got no. Yeah, nothing else. So I think that's it. So thank you all for your time. Really useful debate. As I say, it's an incredibly important document. I think once you get involved in it, you realise how important the local plan is for many aspects of the authority. So thank you all very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you.